Well, it was Separation Saturday, as we're calling it here at Auburn, midway through spring practice, first spring scrimmage. Quarterbacks were live, as we suspected, Brandon, and heard a little bit about how each of them performed today.
Yeah, it seemed like they each had something to, write home about, so to speak, if people still wrote letters. John Franklin III apparently had a long run of 70-plus yards, which isn't too unpredictable considering what we've been hearing about him picking out defensive ends in his own read. He put one ball on the ground, which makes it sound like it was a mesh point thing based off one of the running backs' answers about it matters who does well at the mesh point, so you could take that as it being a fumble with that.
And from the sounds of it, it sounded like the young running backs.
Right.
So that could have been a third-team situation.
Could have been Melich Miller, could have been someone else, could have even been Chandler Cox. But also, Sean White apparently threw a touchdown pass to Rock Thomas, so there's conflicting info whether that was Jeremy Johnson or Sean White. Either way, some long throws, but it seems to me those are not necessarily designed routes where it's going down deep. The other thing with John Franklin III, which is the primary concern and things we heard about him at East Mississippi Community College, that he's not very accurate downfield, and apparently he overthrew some balls today, according to Gus Malzahn.
And this is a limited sample size, obviously, and it's a scrimmage in the spring, first real game-like opportunity. So you're going to take some of these things as growing pains and things that are just going to go along the way. But clearly his playmaking ability stood out. Not to say that Jeremy Johnson or Sean White did, and that's, like you say, everybody kind of came away with something. But it's clear that he's certainly, this is somebody who's going to absolutely, not only contend, but is going to absolutely put himself in the best position possible to win the starting job at quarterback. At the other positions, heard a little bit about the running backs from Javon and Rock. Javon scored, I believe it was pretty much a short one-yard run. So Javon did that. Rock had the long catch, which is more really of what we've come to expect from Javon Robinson and Rock Thomas.
Yeah.
Wide receivers, nothing discernible from Gus Malzahn there from that group, which is, again, not all that surprising. If they didn't pass all that much in this kind of scrimmage, then really not all that surprising. A scrimmage that started Jordan Hare and then moved back over here to the complex. Defensively, not a lot of notes there either. No interceptions, though, would be one major takeaway from it. They did have some fumble recoveries, but didn't hear a lot about the defense specifically. Now, we did hear from Jamel Dean and Stephen Roberts, and they had quite a bit to say about their own paths, their own careers, both in far different situations.
Yeah, they did, but nothing about the scrimmage.
Yeah.
And probably because they didn't have very productive days. I mean, and that much was very clear based off of what we heard from Gus Malzahn on the offensive players. But I think the big takeaway from today is I think they ran the ball quite a bit, especially in the conditions that they were. I mean, you could tell it's been raining here. There was some thunder, so they had to move from Jordan Hare Stadium to the indoor athletics complex here to finish up their scrimmage. It's like too many scrimmages. They went about 100 plays. What can you read from it? I asked Gus Malzahn about, because over the years he's been able to identify one scrimmage, one moment in time where he was like, that was the moment I realized that this guy was going to be our quarterback. And I asked him, could this be a scrimmage where you look back and say, this was the moment I figured out this was going to be our quarterback? And he didn't bat it down. He kind of said it's possible. He's still got to review the film. But this is a starting point for us. The ball is rolling down the hill, so to speak. You can't stop it at this point. Someone's going to be the starting quarterback. I don't think they'll name a starting quarterback after the spring ball. I think we've said that over and over and over again. But there could be a very distinct pecking order, maybe with some oars in there on the depth chart, but it's going to be very distinct. And all the reports of us saying that John Franklin III has been working with the third-team offense in the open periods we get to watch him, don't pay any attention to that because he's been sharing time with first and second team.
We saw first team a little bit on Tuesday as well. And again, it was a matter of time there. In 3 practices at first, or 5 practices, that was not entirely realistic. Even now is quite early, quite frankly. But he has to have an opportunity, as anybody does. If you're going to make this, as I wrote about this morning, if you're going to make the decision, whether it be at the end of spring or any time thereafter, even a fall camp, seeing them in a live situation was, you had to see that. You have to know about decision making, not just physical abilities, because you can chart that up. You can throw 7-on-7. You can do 11-on-11 all you want. Until it's really in a game, you really don't 100% know. But you have to know decision making under real legitimate pressure. Because if you know that you're not actually going to get drilled by the defensive end or linebacker on a blitz, well, then you just don't know at all how someone's going to handle it.
And we saw that with Jeremy Johnson last year.
Yeah. So looking forward for the remaining couple of practices, remaining 7 practices, really 6 with A-Day, the final one more of a review. I would say expect to see more and hear more about John Franklin III down the stretch, and probably more from the wide receivers, and then defense is probably going to be a focal point the rest of the way here, I would think. So pretty much the same storylines from the get-go of spring of quarterbacks, young wide receivers, and defense. Seems to be the same storylines for the second half as well.
And no one seems to be getting rave reviews at receiver, which is very, if I'm a fan, it's a little concerning to not be hearing that.
I've said that's the most intriguing position battle and position group to me this entire offseason.